Hello everybody, JCC Anime here, and today we are going to be reviewing Welcome to Demon School Iruma-kun Season 2. I was very excited to make a review on this since I remember really enjoying Season 2 a lot more than I did Season 1, and now I'm here to share what my thoughts are after having finally sat down and rewatched Season 2, so let's just hop right into it. So, what is the story summary of this season? Basically, after Season 1, Iruma is just living his day-to-day life with his friends in the demon world, and while he's doing that, stuff starts occurring, the normal way most stories go, and like 99% of stories go, and a lot of crazy things happen that I don't really want to spoil too badly. So yeah, let's just hop into some spoiler-free thoughts. So, I really liked this season. I thought this season was a lot better than Season 1. It had a lot more storylines I was really into, and I think it was just better than Season 1 in a lot of ways. There were a few moments where, it felt a bit weird. The comedy didn't always hit every time, but the majority of the comedy did still hit very well. And while I wasn't a big fan of some storylines in this, a majority of them I actually really liked. A few that I'm not too big of a fan of, I can talk about in the spoiler section, but, I say a majority, or a few, but there's only one, and it's not even a bad storyline, it's just a little less interesting than the rest. Well, there's also this one-off, I guess you could say, episode that I didn't really think too much about, but moving past that for now, I really like this season. I think it's a lot better than Season 1. I had a great time watching, and I honestly thought it was very good. It's really hard, again, not to spoil anything, but I definitely feel like Iruma was probably one of my favorite characters this season. He went through a lot of changes and went through a lot of experiences while still maintaining the same personality as before, well, to an extent. He was just definitely one of the more interesting characters, although I still have to say my favorite character of this series is still Amari, who honestly really shines in this season, which I can go about that later in the spoiler section. And all the storylines in this season are really good. Like the first storyline, which mostly just involves Iruma stepping away from his normal antics, wasn't bad. It wasn't my favorite storyline ever, and honestly it wasn't as good as I remember it being when I watched it the first time, but it was still quite enjoyable, and I honestly wish it went on for longer than it actually did. It also introduced us to a new character, Ronove, I think it's Ronove, Romiar, or Lomiar, I don't remember. I think it's just Ronoe or something, and he was both the most fun but irritating character in the show. And I can again talk. There's a lot of spoiler talks here, so what do you say that we just hop into the spoiler section of this review? The very long and overly extensive spoiler section that I do on all of these reviews, because it's really hard to talk about this without spoiling every single detail. So, yeah, let's just hop right into the spoiler section. Here's a timestamp to when the spoiler section will come to a conclusion. So, if you haven't seen Season 2, which if you've seen Season 1, you've probably seen Season 2, then go ahead, I'd recommend skipping over this if you haven't seen Season 2, but if you have, I'd recommend sticking around since I do share a lot. I'm probably going to be sharing a lot of different stuff, and I can see this section going on for quite a bit. So, yeah, let's just hop right into this after counting down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so, going over stories. The first storyline. The storyline where Iruma ends up joining the student council because his club had to be disbanded due to the fact that their old enemy, I guess you could say he's an enemy, but he's also, Kiryu, the guy I really didn't like in Season 1, since he's no longer with them, they had to disband the club or suspend it for a little while. And after that, Iruma and friends now have been separated into different clubs, and so Amari has Iruma join the student council, where after he joins the student council, some mysterious demon sprayed Amari with some weird spray and turns her into a very cutesy, innocent person, like a personality shift. And that's where the character Ronoe, I'm just gonna call him Ronoe, comes in and is just like, I'm going to have some kind of battle, and if I win, then the student council is disbanded. Because he's this super dramatic and self-centered guy who I feel like if I had watched this in Japanese, I probably would have absolutely hated his character, which I know this may sound stupid, but I watched the English dub for Iruma. I know that sounds weird, but I ended up watching the show dubbed back when I was obsessed with dub anime, so I watched it dubbed. And so, yeah, I tried rewatching it subbed, but it just didn't feel the same. I still think there are some parts of it that the sub is more superior, but I can't get over just enjoying the English cast, and that's just how I watched it. I'm probably gonna be watching season 3 that way too. So, yeah, I really liked Ronaway's English voice actor. He really nailed how irritating but also fun Ronaway could be, and it just kind of astounded me because I just had such a fun time watching him on screen, but also absolutely hating him at the same time. Like, he's all like, "Run away, Romeo," which made him both fun and irritating at the same time. Moving past that for now. The storyline itself wasn't too bad, but I thought I remember it going on for longer, but it turns out it only went on for like 4 to 5 episodes, and it didn't stay around for long. That's one of the biggest problems with Iruma storylines for me. Most of the time, the actually interesting ones that I want to see being stretched out as much as possible end up being rushed through instantly, while the ones that are slightly less interesting to me end up going on for extensive amounts of time. It's really weird for me, because the big, long, extensive storyline in this season is about Iruma and friends going to this place called Walter Park, which is like an amusement park, but we'll get into that later. And this storyline, I felt like the first storyline with the student council felt like it could have been a bit longer. Like, it felt like there could have been more story to it. Maybe just spend day-to-day life thing with Iruma and the student council. Even if that sounded like even though that sounds like a waste of an episode, I would have just liked to seen that because I thought the concept was interesting. I would have loved to have seen how that would have worked out. But they moved past it and then had a little side episode with Iruma, Az, and Clara just all getting together and having some fun for a party thing before Ollie, a demon thing inside Iruma's ring that eats up magic, ends up deciding, you know what? Iruma needs to stick out for himself more, so I'm going to turn him into Chad Iruma, or I guess you could call him Evil Cycle Iruma, but he's kind of a Chad. Where, again, this is where I said that the sub kind of takes over a bit with the Japanese, because I think the Japanese voice for Chad Iruma, I'm going to keep calling him Chad Iruma, is awesome. It fits really well for the more serious persona that Iruma's trying to show in that form. But the English dub is a bit weird. Not a big fan of it, but because I mentioned before, I grew up watching the Iruma. Well, I say grew up, but I only watched it like a year ago, like when I first watched the series. When I watched this season, I felt like I had to watch it dubbed. I originally was going to try to watch it subbed, but it just didn't feel right to me. It just felt off. Not because the sub was bad. I think the sub has a lot more superior voice actors, but I was used to the dub. That's just how it is. But I personally was really looking forward to rewatching this storyline because I remember when I watched it the first time being one of my absolute favorite storylines from the Iruma series because it just turns Iruma into a complete Chad and it's just amazing. And upon rewatch, it was fine. I just wish I could have enjoyed it better because I feel like my hype for this storyline is what kind of downplayed it for me because I remember it being so awesome and entertaining and cool. But this just kind of felt a bit mediocre because it had that same issue I mentioned with the previous one where I wanted it to be longer. I wanted it to be more interesting. But they only did it for like 4 to 5 episodes. It wasn't that long. It didn't stick around long enough for me to really, really enjoy it. There were still parts I really liked, like Iruma working hard to get his classroom get his classmates the most cool classroom in the entire school. I really liked that. I thought it was an interesting storyline. But I felt like there could have been more told from Chad Iruma. But in the end, it just kind of happened. It got over with. We moved on. We finished, and we're on to the next storyline, where now they're in the Royal One, the biggest, best classroom in the school, and I thought that was cool because we were introduced. Because thankfully, I had a great amount of time when we were introduced to one of my favorite characters, Professor Ballum, who is honestly a really, in my opinion, really good character. Probably one of my absolute favorites because he was just. I really loved his personality where he really liked a lot of people. He was really nice. He was a really kind person, only he was a little too touchy-feely with people because he just was interested about people. And I really liked that about Professor Ballum. He became one of my top favorite characters this season, and I really liked him. And definitely think, if not for Amari really taking the spotlight this season, I would have absolutely loved his character. And the reason now moving past that for now to go on to the thing about Amari. Amari completely steals the spotlight this season. In the first storyline with the student council, even after she was changed, she had a good amount of growth and even came to the realization that she was in love with Iruma, which I really liked because this whole season was kind of had a lot of attention to detail about raising the relationship between those two. Like how last season was more focused on raising Iruma's rank bit by bit, this season focuses more on his relationship with Amari as the two of them grow closer together. I really like that because after that storyline, we then have the Walter Park storyline where he ends up, after the Walter Park storyline's over, he interacts with her again. She asks him out on a date, and they have a date for one episode, which was honestly one of my favorite episodes in this season. And just the development between these two characters, I absolutely loved. I find the romance between Iruma and Amari to be one of my favorite parts of this series, and I think it's handled really well. Now, if only we didn't have Clara just kind of coming in acting like she might have a chance, because honestly, I can't see Clara as being more than Iruma's friend, but that's just me. So now let's just talk about Walter Park, the longest storyline. I mentioned last time I did not like, I think his name was Kirio, I did not like his storyline in the first season. I thought for how long it wasn't that interesting, and I was not a big fan. This season, however, where he's less in it and more behind the scenes, where instead it's more Iruma and crew having to take on a bunch of bigger, massive threats, I thought it was really cool. And I really enjoyed it. I almost kind of wish that's when they had put in Chad Iruma, because Chad Iruma is literally just him going through his evil cycle. I wish they kind of threw that into the Walter Park story, because that would have made things like super cool and super awesome. But normally Iruma still had some time to shine in this storyline, and overall, I did have a very good time with the Walter Park storyline, way more than I did the previous one, where even though it did feel like it dragged on a little bit, it didn't drag on long enough for me to think, get this over with. It just felt like it was almost reaching the peak of frustration, but it did end before things would get too frustrating to watch, and I honestly really liked that. Although it did kind of get irritating with the next episode, which I honestly was not a big fan of, which was when Iruma and Az decided to go visit Clara's house with her family. I wasn't a big fan of that episode. I've never really been, in fact, a really big fan of Clara. I don't hate her as a character, but I don't like her that much either. She's just kind of there, and I kind of accept her being there, but I don't think she's that great of a character, where I felt like a lot of people grew this season. She didn't. She just kind of was there to be the goofy, fun-loving character, where even Az grew, or Asmodeus, even Az grew up a bit when he realized that in order to protect Iruma, in order to fulfill more in his life, he had to start thinking more about what to do, whether he should retreat, whether he should figure out which battles to fight and stuff like that, which was really good growth for his character. But I just really didn't like it that much. I'm not a big fan of Clara's family. They're not horrible, and sometimes they can have their fun moments, but I didn't like it that much, I guess. It doesn't... I feel like I had more fun with them when I was watching Professor Caligo, Iruma's teacher, stepping in and being forced to hang out with them more than when Iruma and Az visited. I felt like that episode was more entertaining because it just had him going from house to house and interacting with the different families, getting kind of like a peek at what these families are like, and I really liked that. But yeah, the Clara's family storyline with Iruma and Az was not that interesting to me, even if it was only like one episode and was immediately like forgotten from my brain for a bit because I was hopping into the next episode, which was the date with Amari and Iruma, which was really good. It was just a fine episode, I guess. It didn't do anything wrong, it just didn't do anything right either. Though the Amari and Iruma date episode was definitely, again, one of my favorites this season. It was very entertaining, I had a great time watching it. And then the last episode came where it kind of just wrapped things up for the season and prepared things for next season. And I'm honestly really excited to see what comes in season 3 because this was a pretty good season. Iruma and his evil cycle, or Chad Iruma, was very fun to watch. And while I wish there was still more of him, which I'm pretty sure there is more coming in a later storyline, I'm very much looking forward to when season 3 comes out. And I look forward to reviewing it as well. So yeah. We're at the conclusion of this video. One of my final thoughts? This season was honestly very enjoyable. Did it have its ups and downs? Yes. But I still enjoyed it a lot, and I definitely think it was a massive improvement to season 1. and I'm really glad I sat down and watched it because it was just a lot of fun. Would I say it's the best anime to ever come out? No, but I think it was a lot of fun, and the comedy still worked quite well in this season, and I liked it a lot. That's why I'd probably have to give Welcome to Demon School Iruma-kun Season 2 a 9 out of 10. There was still a lot of great moments in it, even with my few gripes, and I was very happy watching it. I enjoyed it a lot, and it definitely improved a lot over the last season. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say. Thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. I always welcome new anime fans to the channel, and I will see you all around. Peace!